Hi there. Alright, so here is Cash's spread. So again, what we're going to do is look at where we are, what he did with the majority of his time, an important day with the relationship and feelings involved, another important day, the death and lesson learned. And we'll get hints of time throughout. And again, all I'm going to do is relay to you images and impressions that are coming through. And your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can, based off of what's coming up here and what's going on in his current life. And this could be, up to the age he is now and beyond. So just keep everything in mind. So if something does not match up at this current time, just keep it in mind, tuck it away for a potential future date when things might emerge, that kind of thing. Alright, so where we're starting is the Asia card. And obviously this spans a vast region when we're talking about Asia. I feel very much like we are going to what feels like China or Russia. I know they're near each other, possibly bordering each other, and if that's the case, it would be literally like on a border. It feels very much like we're looking at a border. So it's interesting because the features of this person, it's a male, feels like it would be like a mix of features where you couldn't really, like, he could pass for one or the other, it feels like. So just keep that in mind. The ambiguous nature of his features could be a theme, for example. You might notice that maybe even today, like in his current life, he may look like he might be able to pass for one thing that he's not, or two, a couple of different kind of things. Maybe not, and that's fine, but that's just the first thing coming up. Another connection would be if he's ever shown an interest in, I want to say, I wish I was better at geography, but like, if it's China, it would be like, it feels like it would be north, and otherwise we're looking at like Russia, or like where they meet. Look it up, Google map that area and see what's right there, if there's a meeting region between the two countries. If he's ever shown an interest towards that area, so either China or Russia, if you show him pictures, if he's ever just show him pictures and see how he reacts, basically. And also this has to do with, if he's heard music from there or language from there, or it can even be the kind of thing where when he was younger, or now even where he has a fondness for characters, like on television shows or whatever, if he's shown a fondness towards characters that are Asian featured, or that kind of thing, I guess. So keep that in mind. It's like little random things you might want to just like see what's going on there when it comes to this. Hold on. Yeah, I feel like there's more. I'm just trying to see what's coming up. Overall, the feeling I'm getting from this, there's this kind of oddly somber feeling. So remember, there could be a couple of different connections here in this life, in these readings. One would be a direct connection, meaning it's the same of what's coming through here, or another would be opposite connection, meaning the soul experienced one thing, wants to experience another, right? So for example, this feeling coming through that's kind of somber and low-key, it could mean, one, direct connection would be his personality in this life could mean that he has more of a somber personality, or more serious, more thoughtful, more it's like someone that ponders, or he may grow into that kind of personality. It's not bad at all. It's just more thoughtful, more like thinking things out before making decisions. He might even actually be wary of making decisions, or he might be someone that takes a long time to make decisions, wanting to weigh out all the options before moving forward with something. On the other hand, he could be opposite, where he's just like spontaneous and blah, you know what I mean? So keep that in mind about decision making, and a thoughtful, serious, somber nature is what it feels like, at least from here. So let's go to what he did with the majority of his time. And they're placing us in his youth, and it feels like we're looking at someone that is a child, at least right now where we are in the reading. And so what he did with the majority of his time. At this time, they're showing me this is the give card. And a lot of times it can mean someone that is, let's say, financially well off and they take care of people, or someone that is just constantly giving their time or energy. And when I laid the cards down with this one, it felt very much like we're looking at someone, when it comes to the give thing, where he's giving himself over to learning. It feels very much like we're looking at someone who is like a sponge and loves to soak up knowledge. Lots of books involved, and almost like there is something very specific that came through having to do with a tutor. So it feels like he had a specific tutor that is almost like how kids have nannies and they grow fond and attached to the nanny, because they give them that emotional, support that the parents aren't giving them, kind of thing. And it feels like this is what the tutor is also giving this boy, is kind of like a support system, a foundation, not just teaching him scholarly pursuits, but also being an effective role model, emotionally and maybe even spiritually as well. This is someone who this child here is basing his own ethics and morals off of. And so I feel like this person, this tutor, is very important in the way that he would be someone that is back in Cash's life currently, or will be if he hasn't met him yet. And it doesn't mean that he would take the role of even the same gender of like a male tutor. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that. It could, souls are, ambiguous. So what we're looking for is a person in Cash's life that is going to feel like it is someone he can mold himself after, someone that would be a very good role model, or it would almost be like a stepfather figure, or even later on, it could be a lover that is very stable and secure and gives Cash a security and stability to his, I guess, emotional body, so to speak, like his mentality, his emotional, something like if he's growing up and you feel like there is some link missing as far as him feeling secure in his body, or secure in his persons, secure in himself. Basically, if you're seeing any insecurities arise, there's someone, I feel, that is a part of his life, or will be, if not already, that will be that link that makes him feel like he is rooted and firmly planted on the ground, someone that grounds him. This is someone that grounds this person here. And it feels like there's a karmic relationship between them, and it's not a bad karmic thing, it's more like a contract, like, hey buddy, I will come down to earth and be human with you, and we will help each other, ground each other, and we'll learn from each other, that kind of thing. This is a very good influence, is basically what it feels like. So if that person is not there already, it feels like they certainly will be. This is someone that comes together, they come together time and time again. Let's see. So you could also be making connections with these scholarly pursuits. So if Cash is showing an inclination towards academia, that would be a connection. But it's not merely academia, it's not just about reading books, and he might be a voracious reader, he might enjoy books. Could be a opposite connection where he doesn't want to touch books in this life, who knows. But there's the theme coming up of study, learning, soaking up knowledge. He could just simply be someone who needs to know everything. If he wants to just know everything, to the point of it, what you might consider be annoying, that kind of, like, might even be as random as, he's the one that's like, are we there yet? Where are we going? Which route are we taking? Which road are we taking to get to where we're going? Like, that kind of thing. Someone that just needs to know everything. That would be a connection, and if not, that's fine. But this is someone that would give, the give card is about giving himself over to his choice of study or choice of career. Whatever he decides to pursue, he goes full in. So be prepared for that. Let's see. This also requires, someone that goes full in, if they're that fully committed, they're going to need someone to be their backer, let's say. So let's say he loves performing. For some reason, let's just say he loves performing. So this is someone that would need to be driven to rehearsal, and someone that would need to be provided the opportunity to get the costumes, and maybe even the coach for singing, or you know what I mean, like everything that has to do with whatever he pursues. It could be sports, it could be baseball, whatever it is. There are things where it feels very much like he chose you to be the person that would be the encouraging force that would be able to support the endeavors, even if it's just emotional. He needs the support, and but honestly what's coming through is driving. So if you feel like you're the driver, or you were the driver at some point, or you might find that you will be the driver, if that makes sense, to get him to where he needs to be. So you are his, for lack of better terms, mode of transport, but it's a very important role. So, and that's metaphorical too, the mode of transport. That's the person that's getting him from A to B, and that's very, very important. So keep that in mind, because he can be very successful if he's given the proper support system for when he wants to go full into whatever he decides to pursue. Okay, let's go to the first important day. So, and keep making connections where you can with the give. Yeah, keep making connections. So the first important day here is the so long, farewell, until we meet again card. And this is the spouse card for the relationship. The feelings here is a little bit of a depression mode, kind of a lonely feel. So what we're doing is we're zooming ahead a few years, and it feels very much like there's a marriage and a union, so to speak, but it feels like it's the tutor who is being brought away, moving to, he continues to be a tutor, but he moves. And it feels like he's moving to another, what's coming through is the word province. So that's interesting in itself, but it feels like he's moving away, and it feels like there's not just the tutor moving on to the next step in his life, next chapter, but this also, because they're so tied together, his next chapter also means the next chapter for this aspect of Cash that we're looking at here. This young boy that's now, it feels like, kind of like I want to say late teenager. And it's a huge lesson in letting go, a huge lesson in going with the flow. And there's a bit of a depression along with it, because the change is almost so rapid and unexpected. And he has to cope with the change and move through it. So this could be the connection could be where Cash might be someone that has a hard time with change and adjusting to certain things. Could be opposite, where he's great at change and adjustment because it had to happen here so that his soul got used to it. So we see that here, but there's a theme having to do with change and adjustment. So it could be that he even chose to come into a life where, let's say, you've had to move a lot, or let's say there's been a divorce, or let's say there's been just basically a change in the status quo of his childhood in some way, in that way. That would be a connection here, because it's a lesson for him. It's a lesson that he needs to kind of master, it feels like, if he hasn't mastered it here, which I'm not really quite sure we're looking at mastery. So it could be that in his life he may need you to help him learn coping techniques, or you might find that as you watch or observe him growing, he's had to come up with certain coping techniques. And this could be seen in certain things, like if you find that he's OCD, if you find that he chose to come in with autism or on the spectrum at all, if you find that he is very, very particular about his things, like his property, if you find that he's very possessive of his things and maybe is not keen on sharing, or getting him to share was a hard lesson, or it was a little tough, this would all be connections here, because he had to basically let go or share the tutor by letting him go to live his life and get married and that kind of thing. So you also might find that he might be possessive over his people. So if he's clingy or needy or has been, or find that he grows in this way where he's clingy, needy with his people, and by growing I mean, let's say he gets into a relationship one day, you might find him to be, as you quietly observe him, to be a bit of a possessive lover, or that kind of thing, if you're privy to that part of his life. But this can also be with you as a parent, clingy, needy, again, having to do with needing to know everything as far as where you're going, when will you be back home, wanting specifics. So the best thing you can do for him would be to try to give him specifics when you can, but when you can't, help him cope in whatever way you feel would help him. But if you're finding that that is an issue at all, it would be a connection here, and you know what's happening now. So if that is a connection and you know what's happening, you will be able to come up with coping mechanisms now, knowing where it's kind of coming from. So it's more about reassuring him and giving him a stable foundation, and being, it feels like you being timely is important. I feel like I said that very recently in another reading, something about being timely, meeting your deadlines. If you're going to tell him I'll be home at 8 o'clock, make sure you're really home by 8 o'clock. Keep your word. That kind of thing would be very important for him, as far as him feeling like he has a stable foundation at his home base. And I feel like that would be very helpful for him to have a very stable foundation in his home base. I feel like there's more connections you could be making here. You may see him, if, let's say there are people leaving his life, like a friend is moving away. You might find that he does go into a depression, and it would be helpful if you're able to maintain contact between him and his friends, even if they do move away. It would be very good for him if you're able to help him maintain contact until he's old enough to do it himself. And so if he does go into depressive bouts, don't worry. That would be a connection here. Again, coping mechanisms or techniques would help him with these potential depressive bouts. You might find if he feels lonely, so to speak, or again, his friends aren't available to him, things like that. At the same vein, what I feel like is coming through are, oddly enough, video games might be something that he tends to turn towards, if not books. But it's not the video games themselves. It would be like the storytelling, where he would be able to basically fall into another world where there are virtual friends if his friends are not available on hand. You know what I mean? So it's not about like, oh, playing video games because they're cool and let's go blow up stuff. It'd be like, oh, let's play video games because in this game, it's this whole world that I'm a part of, and I'm part of a group of friends, and we go exploring and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So don't be wary if you see that happening there. But keep making connections where you can. And we're going to the next important day. This is the graduation card. So sometimes it's academia, other times it could be in graduation mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, blah, blah, blah. The feeling here is karmic. And that's the relationship is karmic, and the feeling here is distant or removed. And what I feel like we're looking at here is a couple of things. We're looking at, I feel, what is the completion of his formal education. So I don't usually the graduation card, quite frankly, is not academic. It can be, and in this instance, it is. And it feels like we're looking at the end of his formal education, and it feels like we are looking at the return of the tutor who is coming to congratulate him, like, wow, great job. I'm here on this auspicious day, and I'm proud of you, and you did very well. And he did do very, very well. There's like very high intelligence in this soul, like very high intelligence, which, by the way, could mean, again, like when we're seeing someone on the spectrum, there's high intelligence where there might be like high mental intelligence or academic intelligence, which also can mean a little bit of a iffiness when it comes to social or emotional intelligence. So if you're seeing that at all, that's all this is. That's the connection. but the karmic card is in play because the tutor's coming back. And it feels like there is a moment here that is meant to occur where this aspect is supposed to forgive and embrace the tutor, because it's almost like he hasn't forgiven him for leaving him, which is a little bit of that emotional intelligence lacking, not quite fully capable of understanding and forgiving, hey, this man needs to move on with his life, and his life is not all about me. So we are looking at an aspect that is even like what we would consider maybe even like self-absorbed or selfish, which isn't bad. It's all lessons. So if you're noticing any traits in that, in Cash, in this life, that's a little self-absorbed, a little selfish, this would be this lifetime would be for you two to help him move past those barriers, because those emotional things are barriers. They act as hindrances and barriers to growth. So in whatever way you can, it'd be ideal for you to help him move past and beyond that, instead of catering to it. But anyway, this is a karmic coming together where he's meant to forgive the tutor, because it's kind of an odd thing, but what's happening is he's putting emotional walls up, because seeing him was more of he allowed it to be more of a trigger in a way where it wasn't like forgive and forget. It was more like this distant card and removed card is the walls, the boundaries being put up emotionally, where it's almost like self-preservation. So if you notice in Cash anything where he's starting to, as he gets older, he starts to maybe put up walls here or there emotionally so that he doesn't get hurt, or it would be basically, if you do see him put up emotional walls or barriers in that way, it would be out of a soul memory of self-preservation from here. And it would be in your best interest to help him move beyond that. And in order to do that, it feels like you're going to have to show a bit of vulnerability for yourself. So if you find that showing that kind of vulnerability is hard for you or difficult, that would be where your karmic connection comes in with him, where you're both supposed to learn from each other in that way. Because he's going to need to see the example of how to be emotionally vulnerable and let walls down and see that it's okay to feel hurt, but learning to cope with the hurt and moving past that and learning from it and growing from it, rather than being frightened of it and not wanting to experience it, you see. So if you connect with that, great. If not, that's fine. It's just what's coming through. But keep making connections here where you can, however you can. There we go. Sorry. So let's see. There's so basically it feels like what we talked about earlier about him coming into contact again with this tutor, there's a karmic thing there that still needs to be played out. So this comes into play. It feels like it will come into play when there needs to be someone in his life that will need to be forgiven. And it's his job in this life now to learn forgiveness. And not just forgiveness. It's like letting go of self-importance in order to forgive. Almost like that attitude of, I shouldn't have to forgive. I'm better than you. But needing to get rid of that whole I'm better, or I shouldn't need to, kind of a bit of an arrogance. Not a bad, it's all lessons or whatever. So, and this might be completely opposite in this life too. So just keep it in mind. There's just a theme of needing to forgive. So until he learns to forgive, that theme is going to keep coming up. And, that can hurt sometimes, because you're forgiving someone or something for a reason. It's because you got hurt. So the best thing you could do is teach him forgiveness as soon as he can learn it, basically, so that the theme doesn't keep coming up, because we all are able to dictate our paths in that way. As soon as we see that, oh, this is a lesson I need to learn, that thing is not going to come up again in your life once you actually learn the lesson. So how you could help him is by learning the lesson quickly early on, so it doesn't keep showing up, so he doesn't have to keep experiencing situations where he would have to forgive, you see. So keep making connections where you can here. And we're going to go to the death card. So this is the murder card. Sometimes it's other people murdering people. Sometimes it means just an intentional death. So this is where we would see like suicide or whatever, because it's intentional murder on the self. So I'm just trying to see what's going on here. Okay, so it feels like the route that this person took, because he's so highly intelligent, it feels like a vice of his that he got into was gambling. And it feels like so it feels like we're looking at someone maybe in their 40s. Their high intelligence allows gambling, almost like how what we know as reading cards today. If you've ever heard of reading cards, like in poker games or something like that. I think it's poker. Or is it? Whatever. Reading cards. However, we would consider that cheating, technically. But really, it's just about, oh, you have such a high intelligence and capacity in your brain that you're able to memorize so well that you're reading cards. So he uses his God-given gifts of a high intelligence to win at his gambling habit all the time. And it feels like people felt like he cheated and ended up actually taking care of him in that way. So I'm trying to see what it is, how it is, but it feels like if anything, it's like, oh, he was shot, or basically like a quick boom out, because they felt like he was cheating. So that's interesting. So just, I guess the only thing to note about that would be what he decides to do with his intelligence. And also, if he does, just watch and see if he might have a vice. He might enjoy gambling, which is perfectly legal and fine. But if he does go towards gambling, just keep an eye out for it, see what happens. It didn't hurt him, honestly. It's not like he gambled and lost everything and lost his home and lost wealth. No, he actually accumulated wealth. He actually became reputable and known and had a nice life from using his gifts and intelligence in the way of gambling. It's just that he happened to come across the wrong people that took it to another level. But that's not something he would have to worry about in this life because it already happened. So it's not something that would repeat itself. It's just what happened here. So keep making connections where you can with that card. Now let's go to the lesson. The lesson here is enlightenment. Now what happened is in this life, his route to enlightenment was right here with the whole being gracious and forgiving. And he missed that chance in this life. So his current life is going to be about enlightenment as well. Not just enlightenment, there's many lessons in a life, but one of the primary lessons in his current life will be enlightenment through emotional intelligence. And that's going to be learning to forgive, learning to let go, learning to release other people of holding them to his own standards, understanding that everyone is living their own life and he can't have standards or high standards of his loved ones or friends in order to love them. He needs to learn to love people for who they are and forgive them when they make mistakes. And I feel like that will be part of your role too, is helping him with that lesson. But that is what we're looking at here. So it's just another life and another chance to learn a wonderful lesson in love and forgiveness and graciousness. And you're part of that. So let's real quick with the time. It feels like the timeline we're looking at is, hold on. Feels like it's back. It feels like it would be around the time where electricity is coming around, but not quite. So that's what we're looking at here. And I don't know when the, electricity really came into play in this region either. So it does feel like maybe like 19th century, possibly 18th century. Yeah, it feels more like 18th century. We're looking way back here. So keep that in mind, I guess, if that's any kind of indication of maybe interest of what he finds interesting in history. If he has a fondness of history during that time period, looking at the 18th century kind of thing, that would just be a connection there, but otherwise, Anyway, so there is his past life reading. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a little somber, but you know, that happens all the time with these readings. I hope you're able to make some connections now and as you move forward. So, yeah, thanks for letting me read him. Have a great day.